Oh, Braxton Hunter, Trinity Radio, has a new set of 10 questions for atheists for 2021. And this set is briefer, more direct to the point. And so my response will be more brief, direct, and to the point. I know my previous video was quite long and rambling. This will be far more succinct and to the point. So if you couldn't stand listening to the first one, hopefully this one will be a little better to the second set of questions. Question one, deconversion story. You need to, if you really want my deconversion story, you should watch my video, uh, Road to Atheism, on my channel. If you want a short answer, uh, my family was kind of weird. They had some religion of some sort, but we never went to church. And I don't honestly know if my father actually believed it or if it was one of those things he thought it was good to believe. So occasionally we would talk about religion, but it wasn't a big thing in our household. But I guess he talked about it enough that I had the fear of hell in me, even if he didn't talk to it about a lot, that seemed to happen enough to where on my own as a young adult, I started to get into it and want to become a Christian and want to be able to have the peace and security of knowing my eternal salvation and all that good stuff. So on my own as an adult, I sought out learning about Christianity, but I just had a hard time fully accepting it. And uh, I read Lee Strobel's The Case for Faith as kind of like a last gasp to try to hold on to my faith. And instead of helping me hold on to it, it made me finally realize, oh, come on, this is all nonsense. And so my handle, Case Against Faith, is a play on the book Case for Faith by Lee Strobel. Okay, if you want more, watch my video, Road, Road to Atheism. Question two, anything that counts as evidence for God? Well, there at least are some things that I would say are somewhat evidence for God, although I think there are better explanations, obviously, or I wouldn't be an atheist. But uh, when I was a Christian or trying to be a Christian, the cosmological argument always seemed to have some uh, sway to me. My father once said that this is close to a direct quote. He said, if all the matter in the universe was ever one dot, it'd be the biggest black hole that ever was, and it couldn't possibly explode without a God to make it explode. Now, I'm quite sure that cosmologists would disagree with that statement, but that was what he said, and it had some resonance with me. Uh, so I would say that the cosmological argument is at least some evidence for God. But of note, that would only be some evidence for a God of some sort, not necessarily any specific God. I can't think of any argument that's a good evidence for the Christian God specifically. Dogs or cats? Both. I've never owned a dog though. I think Braxton. I think your dog looks quite sweet and nice dog. Uh, I've only owned cats simply because I don't have the commit. I imagine owning a dog being a higher commitment as far as time and effort, and I just haven't wanted to commit that much amount of time to a pet. So that's why I've only owned cats. But I love dogs and happy to pet and play with dogs, and I think your dog looks like a nice dog. Uh, did Jesus exist? I admit I'm a biased source. I suspect there probably was no Jesus, although I know I'm a biased, non-expert source, so I totally could be wrong. I am reasonably influenced by Richard Carrier. In fact, I was one of the large donors. My real name, is listed as a donor in his book, uh, the, on the historicity of Jesus Christ. I'm one of the named donors, and but sure, he could be wrong. Uh, I'm not an expert enough to say, oh yeah, he's definitely on the right track. But if you asked me, do I think he existed? I'd say my guess is no. All right. Question number five. What Christian friend is most likely even to help convert me to Christianity, even if I think none of them would be successful? And honestly, these days I just don't have very many Christian friends. Um, And I'm going to name somebody that's definitely not a friend I've never met, but somebody that's known. I will pick Jimmy Carter. You know, he's a guy that day after he gets out of the hospital, he's back building houses for Habitat for Humanity, and he believes that his Christian faith is part of who he is, and makes him who he is. And I have respect for Jimmy Carter. So if I had to pick somebody that would be the most likely to convert me to Christianity, I would have to pick Jimmy Carter, even if I've never met him, and he's definitely not a friend. Six, favorite film or TV series. Well, that's pretty difficult. I like lots of genres. Uh, I like the traditional male genres of action and science fiction. I also like the genres of family. I like rom-coms, even if I'm a straight heterosexual guy. I like rom-coms. Uh, I'm not really big into hardcore horror, but light horror, like for example, the recent A Quiet Place, that kind of stuff. I like. But if I have to pick one thing, I guess I'd have to pick Star Trek, and that's because I started watching it when I was a kid, when I was like 4 years old, and uh, when it was brand new in the '60s. And I didn't fully understand it, but I knew I wanted to stay up past my bedtime to watch it. And I had the Star Trek models in my room as a kid in elementary school, and I've seen every Star Trek movie on opening day. Uh, that said, I am not as big of a fan of it as I used to be in some ways, and it's not because there's a lot of people complain about the new Star Trek being too dark. It's not that it's too dark for me. It's just that I used to think of at least some vagueness of the premise was possible. Like I used to think that someday we could have a utopian society that we were flying around the universe, even if there weren't Vulcans and Romulans. Uh, Something akin to the premise could be possible. These days, I'm not really so confident that something akin to the premise of a utopian society gallivanting across the universe is ever going to be possible, and so that makes it a little harder to watch the series. The suspension of disbelief. It's a little bit harder these days because of that, and not because of it being darker. I like the darker. I still like it. I still watch it. I watch Picard and Discovery, etc. But just the fact that I have a little bit harder time with the suspension of disbelief these days makes it a little harder. Okay, response to contingency argument. That's not an argument that ever resonated very well with me, so I'm not sure I'm going to have any good answer to it. But it just seems like if the everything is contingent upon something, well, for one, does it have to be a god? Can it be contingent on the universe or the cosmos itself? Or two, if it does have to be a god of some sort, could it be just some sort of deistic god? So of course, the same thing could be said about the cosmological argument that it doesn't necessarily work, and even if it did, it would only point to a god of some sort. But nevertheless, the cosmological argument resonated with me to some degree, while the contingency argument never did to any real degree. So I don't give it a lot of thought. Okay, what does it take to be saved? Well, as theoretical BS says, there's a billion different variations of Christianities, and it's basically every Christian has their own Christianity. Uh, but I always basically understood it to be that the primary, at least what most Christians, at least in the United States, believe is that it takes believing at least a few core tenets from the Bible, that Jesus died and was raised, and forgiveness of sins, and you have to believe that. Uh, whether works and how much other stuff you have to believe is necessary, it kind of varies, but that's the core idea. What do I think the Bible teaches about hell? I'm not really an expert, uh, and I haven't read the Bible in quite some time, so I can only go by vague memorances of wailing and gnashing of teeth, and uh, it'll be better to have never been born than to go to hell or something like that. So I always thought of it as being at least a punishment, whether it was any truly eternal punishment. I'm not sure the Bible is clear on that, but I haven't read it in a long time, so I don't know. Final question. What is most problematic position of the Christian church? And Theoretical BS said uh, abortion, and that's a really good answer, and one that I'm tempted to answer as well myself, because I also think that's an important issue. But I don't know anybody that I know has had an abortion. I'm sure I know people. I know that I know people that have had abortions, but nobody that I know do I know that they had an abortion. It's Abortion has never had a direct personal impact on my life because I've never wanted a woman to get an abortion for me, and I've never known anybody that I know to have had an abortion. So it doesn't mean as much to me as the gay issue does to me. And I'm straight, married to the same woman for over 30 years. It's not like it's directly about my life, but it is about friends and people that I've known, and it's impacted their lives. So I have more direct experience with gay prejudiceism. In fact, it's kind of a little bit of a funny story. There's this guy I know that was raised in a kind of a fundamentalist household, anti-gay, and uh, he eventually came out of the closet as gay, and that it was a apparently it was kind of traumatic for him. He hated himself because he was gay and being taught that that was a sin. But the thing that was a little bit funny is that I remember when trying to find, I thought he was anti-gay, and he made some few statements that seemed to be anti-gay. So this was before he came out of the closet. I thought he was straight and anti-gay, and so I looked for uh, Christian sources of acceptance of homosexuality to give to him, to give him an alternate perspective, not because I thought he was gay, but because I thought he was anti-gay. So that was kind of interesting that turned out that way. So I ran through all 10 questions pretty quickly, and I hope I wasn't too boring and gave answers to all the questions quickly and expediently. Talk to you later. Bye.